to On the Fly, today we're going to look at another trade between the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Chicago Blackhawks. Obviously another big trade, one that does involve a lot of cap exchanges. Obviously Tampa was very high over the cap limit, and because of that they got to start trying to trade contracts to be able to fit under it for the next season. And because of this, Chicago did capitalize yet again, and obviously bringing on another big contract. Obviously earlier in the day there was a Fleury trade where they grabbed him for absolutely nothing. Although there was a prospect involved, but he will be nothing more than an NHL player. So they did acquire Tyler Johnson and a 2023 second-round pick in exchange for Brent Seabrook's contract. He'll be placed on LTIR, and he will most likely retire after, most likely pretty quickly. I don't see him playing next year, and I think the whole point of that is just to get something in return to make sure it's not saying that we just traded this guy for nothing. Obviously, he was a big part of their Stanley Cup run, and because of that, he does deserve to be traded for something. So I think that Seabrook is kind of just for the fans to know that he was actually worth something to the team, and not just for a prospect or something small that is kind of insignificant for his role with the team, as well as kind of helping to win those 2 cups over the last 2 years. Overall, it's a great trade for Chicago. Obviously, they capitalized yet again, picking up a player with a bad contract. Obviously, Fleury, as I said earlier in the day, they grabbed him up. Although I do think, as you start to hear some of the rumors that he doesn't want to play in Chicago, I think it does make a lot of sense that now they trade him to Pittsburgh. Obviously, Pittsburgh is in a little bit of cap trouble right now, so I believe at least that the Penguins will try and negotiate a sort of a 50% retained contract with the Blackhawks to try and bring Fleury back to Pittsburgh. I think that makes the most sense as of now, because I don't see Fleury retiring. I think he's too good, and he's still kind of in the prime of his career. Obviously, he is starting to get to that back end, but in general, it doesn't make a lot of sense for Fleury to retire. I think he still has it in him, and I still believe that, and if he does retire, I think he loses a shot with Team Canada. Obviously, the Olympics are coming up, so I think after this year, is the year he starts kind of really starting to consider his options, whether to retire or whether to keep going. But I think in the end, I think he will play this year. Whether or not he says that he's not going to play for Chicago is different. But I think in the end he will play for them, or not play for them, but he'll definitely be playing this year, whether or not he's playing for Chicago. But in general, and back to this trade, I think the whole point, as I said before, Tampa getting Seabrook is to place him on LTIR. Obviously, he's not coming back. He's an older guy that really does no part on the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I think because of that, over the next few days, you will see a retirement notice out of Seabrook. He has been struggling in terms of injuries, so it makes a lot of sense for him to retire. I don't see him playing with Tampa at all. So for Tampa, obviously getting something back, obviously it's nothing really, a retired player that they'll just throw away with a contract, but they are getting the cap space that they're kind of looking for, obviously $5 million. And it was a bad contract to begin with. Obviously Tyler Johnson wasn't quite worth it, but I think in the end he helped win Tampa the Cup, so it really didn't matter, especially come playoff time where the contracts can go as high as you want. Obviously you saw it with Kucherov, where Kucherov was on LTIR the whole year, and then he came back at the end, and that kind of boosted Tampa's over the cap frenzy. So I think with that they had to kind of make this move to get rid of him. I think they could have definitely fetched something more, but I think it was pretty decent. And obviously Chicago won this trade, not much of a consideration, taking on more and more cap, but they are starting to become more and more of a contender, which is something to watch for. Picking up Seth Jones, Caleb Jones, Marc-Andre Fleury, whether they still keep him or not, is a different argument, and then Tyler Johnson. So within the span of a day, I think it's really changed for me my perspective on the Chicago Blackhawks. I think they do now have a shot at a playoff run, if not a deep playoff run. But they're also still in that rebuilding phase. Obviously, they're not what they used to be. Their team is still starting to age a little bit more, but I think in the end it will help them, especially as a sort of quote-unquote rebuilding team. I think it helps them a lot. And obviously gaining a second-round pick, which I haven't talked about yet. Obviously, a second-round pick is never a bad thing to be frowned upon, especially Tampa's second-round pick. And they picked that up with ease. So I think taking on Johnson and getting a second-round pick as a bonus is a great deal for them. not losing anything. I saw something today about how they were able to grab Fleury, Johnson, and a second-round pick for an AHLer and a retired player. And so that just shows that Bowman's in it to win it. So I think, although they aren't, it doesn't match up necessarily with what their kind of team's angle is, being a rebuilding team. I think it still is a good trade for them. Obviously, they are starting to go towards that little more contending route. And I don't see them as much as full-on, per se, buyers or cup contenders, or call them what you want. But I do see them not being a rebuilding team. I think they do have what it takes to at least make a playoff run, keep their fans interested, and then eventually, as they start coming up with their younger guys, finally making a cup run within the next few years. So overall, in terms of grading, I think without a doubt, another A+ day for Stan Bowman and the Chicago Blackhawks. Obviously, they won this trade, not much of a consideration. And then for the Tampa Bay Lightning, I'm going to give them about a B+. Obviously, never a bad thing to get rid of their cap. They needed to do this move, and they had to do it pretty quickly. So, especially with free agency around the corner, where some of their guys are starting to go out and seeing bigger money, I think it is important for them to kind of clear that cap and not have to force a move at the end, especially if one of their RFAs gets offer sheeted. I think it is important for Tampa to be able to match it without having to worry about that cap, that annoying cap that keeps coming back and back. And obviously they are starting to run out of it, so it is important for them to clear that cap in order. And then the real reason why it isn't an A or an A- is just because they didn't get a great deal for it, but they did kind of see what they were looking for, and that's what they ended up doing. So if you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching. If you'd like to drop a like, if you'd like to consider subscribing, tell all your friends, but leave a comment down below your thoughts on the trade. Until next time, see ya.